The dusty heat rising from the asphalt, 16 hours on the clock, hospital scrubs, and silence on the phone. Not a single message. Once the house had welcomed him with warmth and comfort. Now, a stranger's car sat in the driveway, and black trash bags filled with his belongings littered the lawn. And that man, grinning, was once just a name from the past. In a single moment, marriage gone, home gone, the life he knew gone. But when you've been dropped into hell before, literally from the sky under fire, you don't flinch. You breathe, you watch, you remember. 3 days have passed since then. 3 days in which he stopped being a trauma doctor and became who he used to be. The one who knows how to wait, how to listen, how to track roots and melt into shadows. What began as a personal betrayal is unraveling into a drug cartel's web, a chess match where the stakes are not just pride, but lives. With each night, the plan sharpens. The intent hardens. Because when you take everything from a man, be ready for him to come back for something you were never meant to have. And the end? It's already near. Greetings, my dear friend. I am very happy that you are watching my video, and I will be even happier if you subscribe to my channel. This will make me even happier. Let's get started. Damian Hale ran a hand across his damp brow as he stepped out through the automatic doors of Mercy General. After a 16-hour marathon in the ER, his body throbbed with exhaustion, and his mind felt foggy, but it was the kind of weariness that came with meaning. It had been 3 years since he swapped his military gear for hospital scrubs, and finally, life in trauma care didn't feel foreign. The non-stop urgency, the heavy weight of responsibility, the razor-sharp focus, it all fit him in a way civilian life never really had. The fading summer sun bounced off the pavement as he slid into his truck's driver's seat. He checked his phone again. No messages from Leah. Lately, that silence had become a regular presence. After 5 years of marriage, the past 6 months had been defined by a strange, growing disconnect. He'd pinned it on her recent job change, a demanding role at a marketing agency, endless conferences, late-night team bonding weekends, and messages she dismissed as soon as he entered the room. She said it was just job stress. He'd nodded, played along. As he drove by the Thai restaurant where they'd once shared their first date, his foot hovered over the brake out of habit, then thought better of it and pressed on. The last few times he'd brought home dinner from there, the containers had gone untouched, eventually tossed. Turning into his neighborhood, he caught sight of their house, the one they'd purchased together 2 years ago, and something shifted in his chest. A black Audi, unfamiliar and out of place, sat where he usually parked. Leah hadn't mentioned any visitors. As he pulled into the driveway, something on the lawn pulled his attention. Several large black trash bags were piled by the curb. A tall, heavily built man with tattoos crawling down one arm was tossing another bag onto the heap. Leah stood nearby, her hair tied back, speaking animatedly. Damian stepped out of his truck, the first spark of confusion quickly solidifying into something colder. Her laugh died the instant she saw him. "You're home earlier than I thought," she said, arms crossing in front of her like a shield. "Early?" he echoed, eyes flicking to the trash bags. 16 hours is early now? The way the bags sagged, the way they were arranged, it all clicked before she could explain. "What is this?" His tone remained steady, controlled. The tattooed man met his gaze with a smug grin that rang vaguely familiar, and Damian's stomach twisted. "You remember Victor, don't you?" Leah asked casually, like she was reminding him of a distant acquaintance. "From college." Recognition struck like a hammer. Victor Price, the guy she once called the one that got away after one too many drinks years ago. "What's in the bags?" Damian asked, though he didn't really need an answer. "We had to make space in the closet for Victor's things," she said, her voice flat, smile brittle. He waited for some kind of punchline, a laugh, a shake of the head, a backpedal, but none came. "How long is he planning to be here?" he asked. Victor threw an arm around Leah's shoulders like he belonged there, grinning as if the question was silly. "Indefinitely," he said, like the matter had been settled a while ago. Damien didn't react. He stood motionless, just like he had back in the war when staying still meant staying alive. Old instincts didn't die easily. His thoughts settled into quiet order. "All right," he said softly. Leah's face twitched. She hadn't expected this. Rage, maybe. Heartbreak, maybe. But not silence. "Your things are all right there," she said, gesturing to the bags. "I packed everything for you." "Appreciate the help," Damien replied, voice even. He walked to the passenger side of the truck, opened it, and reached for the go bag he always kept ready, just in case. Another habit that had lingered from his deployment days. Wordlessly, he began loading the bags into the truck bed. Leah and Victor stood by, unsure of how to react to his calm. "That's it?" Leah finally called out. "You're just leaving?" He shut the tailgate and looked her straight in the eye. "Yes." As he slid into the driver's seat, he caught Victor's reflection in the mirror, whispering something to Leah. They both laughed. Damien pulled away without a word. By nightfall, he was booked into a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. His belongings were organized neatly in one corner. Still dressed in scrubs, he sat at the edge of the bed and made a single phone call. "Blake," he said when the line connected, his voice quiet but firm. "I need a favor. It's stupid, but I need it." The storage facility hadn't changed. It was tucked away in a sketchy industrial strip. No cameras, no questions, just monthly cash. When Damien had first come home, his former CO had told him something that stuck. "Guys like you don't fit here. Always have a backup plan." He'd listened. Blake Morgan was already there, leaned against his Jeep, cigarette dangling from his fingers. He gave a small nod as Damien approached and rolled the metal door upward with a screech. They'd served 6 years and 3 tours together. While Damien turned to medicine, Blake had used his skills to build a private security firm. "Didn't think you'd actually come back to this place," Blake said, watching him with quiet curiosity. Inside, the unit was just as Damien had left it. A metal footlocker, a filing cabinet, and several sealed storage bins. He clicked on a flashlight and stepped inside. "Didn't think I would either." "You want to tell me what's going on?" Damien unlatched the footlocker. Neatly packed inside were items he'd assembled in the quiet, sleepless nights after returning from war. Multiple IDs, passports, untraceable credit cards, tactical gear. It was a kit for escape, built for the day when the world stopped making sense. "I will," he said after a pause. "But not now." "Leah brought her ex back and moved him into the house," Damien said, his voice flat, emotionless. "Tossed all my stuff on the lawn like it belonged in the trash." Blake let out a low whistle. "Damn, man, that's cold. You need a place to crash? I've got a spare room. First things first, I need intel." Damien opened his laptop and hit the power button. "I want everything there is on Victor Price." Over the next 3 days, Damien vanished from his normal life. He skipped his hospital shifts without notice. He ignored Leah's barrage of texts. At first, she came in hot, angry and accusing. Then her messages turned confused. By day 3, they were filled with desperation, begging for a response. Meanwhile, Damien and Blake dug deep, piecing together a detailed profile on Victor Price. Age 34, former up-and-coming semi-pro boxer who fizzled out before making it big, a trail of assault charges that conveniently disappeared, and currently employed as a consultant for a businessman widely suspected of running dirty money through legit fronts. "This guy's a walking red flag," Blake muttered, flipping through suspicious financials. "How the hell did Leah get caught up with him again?" Damien stared at a grainy, still image of Victor stepping out of an underground casino. That's exactly what I need to find out. The answer came on the fourth day. A deep dive into Leah's recent social media activity showed she'd been involved in promoting a new fitness center chain. The owner, Alexei Karpov, the same shady mogul Victor worked under. No way that's a coincidence, Damien said, connecting the dots. Victor used Karpov's name to land her that gig. That's how he got back into her life. But what worried Damien more was what he uncovered about Karpov, a Russian national with suspected ties to organized crime, known for making problems disappear permanently. Your wife could be in serious danger, Blake warned. If Victor is using her as a way to get into your old place for something Karpov's involved in. Damien shut the laptop with finality. It's not my house anymore. Blake looked at him, cautious. What's your next move, Damien? Damien shook his head slowly. I don't know, but I'm thinking it's time I had a word with Victor. For the next 48 hours, Damien kept watch over the house he used to call home. Stationed in the empty property across the street, he kept detailed notes. Leah's routine was clockwork, out by 8:15 in the morning, back just after 6:30 in the evening. Victor, on the other hand, was unpredictable. Some days he didn't return at all. Then, on the third morning, something shifted. A delivery truck arrived. 2 workers carried in several heavy crates while Victor supervised. He signed the delivery slip and immediately made a series of urgent calls. With a directional mic aimed from across the street, Damien caught pieces of the conversations. Location secure, she has no idea, moving faster than expected. 3 days, tops. Later that night at 11 p.m., Victor left the house. Damien followed. Victor drove to a remote warehouse on the outskirts of town. There, he met with Karpov and 3 others. They were inside for 2 hours before everyone dispersed. But Victor didn't go home. Instead, he drove to a strip club near the city limits. Damien waited in the parking lot, watching. At 3 a.m., Victor stumbled out, drunk, flanked by 2 women. When they asked for their money, he shoved one of them hard enough to knock her off balance, then cursed them both off. As he staggered toward his car, Damien stepped out of the shadows. Need a ride? Victor squinted at him, trying to focus. Recognition dawned. You're her husband. Pararescue vet. 12 years in the Rangers. Now I'm a nurse, Damien corrected, his tone even. Victor let out a short laugh. Whatever, man. What do you want? Just a conversation. Damien gestured to a 24-hour diner across the street. Might as well grab some coffee. The alcohol and curiosity got the better of Victor. He agreed. They slid into a booth in the far corner. The waitress dropped off 2 mugs of coffee, then vanished without a word, sensing the tension between them. I came home after a double shift, Damien started, his voice calm but pointed. Found all my clothes in trash bags on the front lawn. My wife sent me a message. Said they needed closet space. For her ex. When I asked how long he'd be around, they both laughed. Forever, they said. Victor smirked. Man, the look on your face must have been priceless. I didn't make a scene, Damien went on, but I didn't stop watching. He leaned in. I know you've got something stored at that house, and whatever it is, it's going somewhere in 3 days. Victor's grin faded. His eyes sharpened. You don't know what you're talking about. Guns? Drugs? Doesn't matter. Leah's mixed up in it now, whether she knows it or not. When the feds come knocking, and they will, she's going down with you. There aren't gonna be any feds, Victor snapped. Damien didn't flinch. Unless someone gives them a reason to come. A heavy silence stretched between them. Victor's jaw tightened. So what do you want? I need you to understand something, Damien said, his voice dropping into a calm, chilling cadence. I survived 3 deployments in combat zones where death came without warning. I've killed men who never saw it coming, and I was damn efficient at it. He slid a smartphone across the table toward Victor. That phone contains evidence of every scheme you and Karpov have been working on. In 72 hours, it uploads everything to federal databases, unless I personally enter a kill code. Victor's jaw clenched, fury flashing in his eyes. You think you can run from me? That we won't find you and shut you down permanently? Damien's smile was razor thin, empty of warmth. I'm counting on you making the attempt. He stood, tossed a wad of cash onto the table, and added, 3 days, Victor. Make your play. He turned his back and walked away, but Victor's voice rang out behind him. She never loved you, man. She was just waiting for me to come back. Damien didn't break stride. The wheels were already in motion. Blake sat silently, absorbing every detail as Damien recounted the meeting. His expression was grim, his jaw tight. You realize you just painted a massive target on your back, he said. Karpov doesn't mess around. They were holed up in one of Blake's hidden safe houses, an apartment fortified like a bunker, designed for people needing to disappear. It had thick, soundproofed walls, reinforced glass, and surveillance on every entrance. I want Victor to panic, Damien replied. He'll go straight to Karpov. They'll move fast, try to eliminate me before their plans lock into place. Blake eyed him skeptically. And how does that help you? Damien spread a detailed map across the table. Because while they're hunting me, I'll be building the real trap. By the next day, things were unfolding just as Damien had predicted. Blake's network kept the intel flowing. Karpov's people were actively searching for Damien. Word was out. 2 men had been spotted near the hospital where Damien still worked part-time. At the same time, Damien was reaching out to old allies, people who owed him. A pharmacy tech he'd once shielded from disciplinary action handed over specific chemical compounds without a single question. An ex-patient, now sober thanks to Damien's help, provided his skilled hands for delicate lock work. While they prepped gear, Blake glanced at Damien. You never explained. Why your house? Seems like a bad location for any kind of operation. Damien paused, then answered. It's geography. Our backyard backs up to protected forest. Half a mile through the trees, there's a utility road that links directly to the interstate. It's perfect for moving shipments unnoticed. Blake raised an eyebrow. And Leah? You think she's part of this willingly? Damien hesitated. He'd been avoiding the question, unsure if he even wanted the answer. Finally, he said softly, I don't know, but I have to find out. Later that night, while Victor and Karpov were in the middle of a tense conversation, Damien slipped through a familiar entry point, a basement window he'd intentionally left unsecured years ago. Old habits from his service. Always leave yourself a back door. The house felt alien now. Victor's belongings littered the place. His clothes were hanging in the closet where Damien's used to be. The bathroom shelves were lined with his grooming gear. Every trace of Damien had been erased, replaced by photographs of Victor smiling beside Leah. In the guest room, Damien found exactly what he was expecting. Heavy crates stacked against the wall. With careful precision, he opened one without leaving a trace. Inside, he found what he feared. Vacuum-sealed bricks of high-grade heroin, easily worth millions. As he resealed the crate, he heard the front door open. He ducked silently into the closet, slipping behind a curtain of coats. Leah walked in alone, her steps slow and tired. She dropped her purse on the bed and pulled out her phone. Her voice strained as she spoke. Hi, Mom. Yeah, it's me. No, I haven't heard from him. It's been a week. I know. I feel terrible. She listened for a moment, then said, You don't understand. Victor said it was only temporary, that we needed a safe place to store stuff. I didn't know what it was at first. By the time I figured it out, I was already too deep in. Her voice wavered, on the edge of breaking. I can't go to the police. Victor told me what would happen. I never wanted this. I didn't mean to hurt Damien. He deserves so much better. The call ended. She sat down on the bed, burying her face in her hands, sobbing quietly. From his hidden spot, Damien heard every word, his heart torn between the pain of betrayal and the raw sorrow in her voice. When she finally left the room, he slipped out the way he came. In his pocket, he carried a small sample of the heroin and a single strand of Leah's hair, taken from her brush. Back at the safe house, Blake looked up from his laptop as Damien returned. "You get what you were after?" Damien's face was unreadable. "I got more than I thought I would." Meanwhile, at Damien's former home, Victor Price was beginning to spiral. Patience had never been his strength. Now he was confined in a house filled with tension, stuck with a woman whose nerves were wearing thinner by the hour. But Damien was already several moves ahead. Time was running out and the trap was closing fast. 3 days. That had been the ex-husband's warning. Now 2 were gone, and despite Karpov's forces scouring every corner of the city, Damien Hale had vanished without leaving so much as a footprint. "He's bluffing," Victor reassured himself, pacing restlessly in the dim light of the living room. "There's no proof, no calls, no social media, nothing they could use." And yet the doubt kept clawing at him. From the start, he'd underestimated Damien, had written him off as another inconsequential civilian. But the icy calm in his eyes during their brief diner encounter told a different story. This wasn't a man crippled by loss. This was someone highly trained, someone who slipped into the shadows the moment things went south. Leah entered silently, arms wrapped around herself. "We need to talk about what comes next," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not now," Victor snapped, his tone curt. "There are priorities." "You mean my husband?" she said, softly, yet pointedly. His gaze turned sharp, his voice harsher. "He's irrelevant. Just a washed-up field medic who played soldier when he got back." "Then why are you terrified of him?" she asked, her tone calm but cutting. Before he realized it, his hand flew out. The slap landed with a crack, jolting her back a step. Stunned, Leah raised a hand to her cheek. "I'm not afraid," Victor said, teeth clenched. "I'm staying smart." "There's a difference." His phone rang. Karpov. Without another word, Victor stormed outside, leaving Leah alone with something shifting behind her eyes, something harder. Elsewhere in the city, Damien and Blake were already executing the next phase of their plan. They had pinpointed Karpov's 2 most dangerous lieutenants, Samuel Ramirez, an ex-intelligence officer with a love for expensive whiskey, and Maxim Pavlov, Karpov's blood relative and heir apparent. "We destabilize from within," Damien said as they watched Samuel stroll into his usual bar. "Break the head into pieces, and the body will devour itself." Inside, Blake slid onto a stool beside Samuel and ordered the same whiskey. He struck up a conversation about rare spirits, spinning stories, and bonding over labels. Within 20 minutes, Samuel excused himself to use the restroom. That was the window. Blake spiked his drink with a fast-acting cocktail. By sunrise, Samuel awoke groggy and confused in a run-down motel. His mind was a fog, no memory of the night before. On the nightstand, a burner phone buzzed silently. One message displayed, "Insurance delivered to Karpov. We need to meet, your office. Noon." At the same time, Maxim received an unmarked envelope. Inside were surveillance photos, Samuel meeting with a known FBI informant, and financial records pointing to offshore accounts flush with dirty money. By midday, Karpov's core command was unraveling. Samuel and Maxim hurled accusations at each other, paranoia thickening the air. Karpov struggled to maintain control. The scheduled weapons shipment, originally set to move alongside the narcotics drop in 3 days, was abruptly frozen. "They're eating each other alive," Blake reported after checking in with contacts. "Karpov's pulled his men off the streets, too busy containing the chaos." "Perfect," Damien replied with a nod. "Exactly the opening we needed." He pulled out a burner phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. "Major Cole, it's Hale. Time to call in that favor. The next day, DEA Special Agent Diana Wells received an encrypted message. Full details of an impending drug shipment. Location, players, timing. But what stood out was the warning. A rogue ex-soldier intended to intercept the operation. "This could get ugly," she told her team. "We go in tomorrow night." That same night, Damien began setting the last phase in motion. In a hidden safe house, he carefully lined up a series of syringes, each one measured, labeled, deliberate. Blake watched from across the room, unease on his face. "What the hell is that mix?" "Scopolamine, ketamine, a few custom additives," Damien replied. "They won't show up on a typical tox screen. Burn out of the system fast." Blake looked unsettled. "Damien, you really sure about this?" Damien's expression was unreadable as he locked the syringes into a hardened carrying case. "Victor made his choice the moment he walked into my house. Leah made hers when she tossed my gear on the front lawn." "And you?" Blake asked. "You okay with where this is heading? Because this isn't something you come back from." Damien didn't blink. "I crossed that line years ago, on battlefields you couldn't stomach. The only difference now is I decide who gets what they deserve." On the third day, Damien sat alone in Blake's secure apartment, quietly disinfecting and arranging surgical instruments. His hands, once used to stabilize trauma victims and perform life-saving procedures, were steady as ever. But today, they weren't meant for healing. His phone buzzed. A message from Blake. "Delivery made." The delivery was a fabricated intelligence dossier dropped into Karpov's hands through an anonymous channel. It claimed Damien was planning to hijack the drug shipment that very night. The trap was fully set. Elsewhere in the city, Victor paced in what had once been Damien's home office, now repurposed into a chaotic command post. Maps were pinned to the walls, burner phones scattered across the desk, a pistol resting beside them. "Karpov's moving the entire operation tonight," he told Leah, who stood silently in the doorway. "Everything. My DEA contact says there might be a raid." Leah's face turned ghostly pale. "You told me we had 3 days." "Plans changed," Victor said, glancing at his watch. "The trucks roll in at midnight. We load fast, disappear. Everything's gone by 1. Leah's voice was a hesitant murmur. "Then that's it? We're clear? What about Damien?" Victor's jaw clenched. "Karpov's guys got a lead. They're chasing it down." Leah's breath came slow and shaky, eyes slipping closed. "Are they planning to kill him?" Victor gave a non-committal shrug, his face unreadable. "Would it even matter?" "He's not part of your world anymore," he added, gripping her arm. "You're with me now. This is real." She jerked away, fire in her eyes. "Real?" she echoed with a bitter laugh. "Is this what real looks like? Running product for Karpov? That your idea of a future?" Disgust flickered across Victor's face. "Don't start preaching. You knew the score the moment I moved in. I thought you just needed a place to stash something. I didn't realize we were dealing with heroin, or that Damien would get dragged into it." Victor barked a dry, joyless laugh. "Your husband made his own mess. He crossed a line when he threatened me." Outside, cloaked by darkness, Damien crouched low in the yard, headphones snug against his ears, feeding from a directional mic aimed at the house. The picture was becoming clearer. Leah wasn't entirely clean, but she wasn't the mastermind either. Maybe a pawn, maybe scared, but certainly not innocent, manipulated, trapped. Yet none of that altered the mission. Night had fully taken hold when Damien made his move. Victor was busy downstairs, focused on final prep. That was the window he needed. Slipping through a hidden entrance known only to him, Damien glided inside like a shadow. He passed silently into the kitchen, where a half-empty bottle of bourbon sat. Part of Victor's nightly ritual, as predictable as clockwork. From his coat, Damien pulled a syringe and injected a clear liquid into the bottle. A precise dose, enough to disable without killing. Then he vanished once more, retreating into the trees behind the house. Nestled in a camouflaged blind, he began assembling his rifle with practiced precision. Thermal optics, long-range scope, lines of sight triple-checked. The view was perfect. The house, the road, every angle accounted for. He was ready. By 10:30 p.m., 2 black SUVs pulled into the driveway. 6 men stepped out, Karpov's enforcers, poised to oversee the operation. Inside, Victor greeted them, a tight coil of nerves hidden behind a calm front. Damien watched as Leah was directed upstairs, kept away from the action. At 11:15, Victor reached for the bourbon and took a long drink. By 11:30, the effects began to show, his gait unsteady, a hand to his forehead, bracing himself against the countertop. By 11:45, he was stumbling toward the staircase, brushing off Karpov's crew with a slurred excuse about needing rest. Damien followed his ascent through the scope, swaying, faltering, until he reached the bedroom where Leah was waiting. Her posture was tense, their brief exchange sharp and urgent, told through body language and rapid gestures. Victor collapsed onto the bed, sluggish and disoriented. Leah stood at the doorway, unsure, caught between panic and calculation. Everything was unfolding perfectly. Damien pulled out his phone and typed a message to Agent Wells. Target location active. Shipment verified. Then another, directed to Blake. Phase 1 done. Initiate Phase 2. Across town, Blake tapped a number into his phone from memory. A terse voice answered. Cole. This is Morgan. Green light from Hale. A brief pause. Copy that. Teams are standing by. Just before midnight, 3 unmarked vans crept up a back road, headlights dark. Their timing was flawless. DEA agents took up positions nearby, weapons drawn, eyes locked on Wells for the go-ahead. Inside the house, unaware of the tightening net, Karpov's men moved swiftly, organizing and prepping the shipment. Upstairs, Victor lay motionless, slipping into paralysis. Leah hovered close, fear plain on her face, a flicker of hope flickering behind it. In the woods, Damien pressed the transmit button on his radio. Bravo team, status. Set, Cole's voice replied. 12 men, NVG's on. Awaiting orders. Hold for Phase 2, Damien instructed. Below, the smuggling operation surged forward. Crates were being loaded into the trucks. Through the scope, Damien's gaze stayed locked. In the bedroom, Victor's breaths were shallow, pupils dilated. The sedative was working, neutralizing without killing. Leah checked her phone again, tension etched across her face. Damien adjusted his hold on the rifle. The trap was sprung. The empire Victor had built with Karpov was crumbling. And Damien Hale was ready to watch it burn. The operation was carried out with surgical accuracy. No room for error, no trace of improvisation. These weren't low-level pushers trading scraps on street corners. These were veterans of the drug trade, professionals through and through, each move practiced, deliberate. From his elevated position, Damien adjusted his position slightly and fixed the scope of his rifle on the lead truck. The driver's features sharpened into view. Maxim Pavlov, Karpov's nephew. His presence confirmed the stakes. This shipment wasn't routine. It was pivotal. Perfect. Damien tapped his phone and initiated the call. Agent Wells answered on the second ring. They're in transit, he said briskly. 3 vehicles, eastbound along the service road, headed straight for I-40. He paused, then added, Convoys armed. Minimum 6 guards. Wells's tone shifted immediately. Who is this? How do you... Damien didn't let her finish. You've got what you need. Now's your window. 5 minutes before they vanish. He ended the call without waiting for a response and switched frequencies. Cole, green light. Phase 2 is a go. What followed was a storm of coordinated chaos, calculated to the second. 2 charges detonated on the service road, not to injure, but to trap. A planned obstruction sealing their path backward. Simultaneously, Cole's team, ex-Special Forces, emerged from the tree line opposite the road. Their sudden tactical appearance mimicked an ambush, herding Karpov's people back toward the estate. At that precise moment, DEA agents, misreading the maneuver as a getaway attempt, surged forward with sirens screaming and floodlights blazing. Barked commands echoed through bullhorns. Caught between two threats, the smugglers reacted exactly as expected, fleeing to the house, dragging their product with them, preparing to make a desperate last stand. Inside, Leah heard the eruption of noise. She darted to the window, her face ashen, eyes wide as the yard outside transformed into a battleground. Panic rising, she snatched up her phone and started dialing. Damien watched through the scope, silently counting. As the final man disappeared inside, he spoke calmly into the radio. Phase 3. Moving in. Using the confusion as a shield, he slipped into a blind spot he had identified days earlier, an area invisible from both the main road and the front approach. At the concealed basement entrance he had previously used, Damien entered the house unnoticed, ascending the stairs without a sound. The house was pure disorder. Armed enforcers had taken up positions, some aiming at the DEA outside, others bracing for a second attack from the rear. None saw Damien ghost past them, a silent presence, making his way down the hallway toward the bedrooms. In the master bedroom, Leah stood with her back to the door, still clutching the phone. Victor lay on the bed, conscious but barely able to move. His eyes met Damien's and filled with fear. "They've boxed us in," Leah was saying, voice shaking. "Victor is out cold, drugged, or I don't even know." She turned and froze, phone slipping from her hand. "Hello, Leah," Damien said smoothly, his tone composed and cool. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Downstairs, the sound of glass breaking and shouted commands signaled the breach. "No time," Damien continued, stepping into the room. His gaze flicked to Victor. "So you've been playing caretaker to my decoy?" "Damien," Leah's voice cracked. "What did you do?" "I crafted a story," he replied flatly, as if it were nothing more than a minor chore. "Karpov believes there's a traitor in his camp. The DEA thinks they've disrupted a major smuggling route." He glanced between her and Victor. "And you two? Just unfortunate collateral." "You set us up," she whispered, eyes wide. Only returning the gesture, he answered calmly. He approached the bed, towering over Victor, whose eyes burned with impotent rage. The noise downstairs intensified, boots stomping on stairs, doors forced open. "They'll be here in moments," Damien said. "They'll find the drugs. Victor's fingerprints all over everything. And you, Leah, the woman who let it all happen right under her nose." "I didn't know," she sobbed. "I didn't realize what was happening, at least not until it was already too late." "Maybe," Damien said with a shrug. "But it's out of my hands now. You can explain that to the jury." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a syringe. "What is that?" Leah asked, stepping back, her voice rising. "Just a safeguard," he replied. "What's already in him won't show in an autopsy. But this," he held up the needle, "this will stop him cold. When they find him, it'll look like his heart gave out under stress." "You're going to kill him?" she gasped, horror taking over. "Damien, no." "Why not?" he said simply, and stepped forward. His voice barely registered above a whisper, yet it hit with the force of a bullet. "He'd taken everything from me, my home, my relationship, my very sense of self. And why? So he could convert my life into a waypoint for his drug operation? So he could feel like he'd won a battle I never agreed to fight?" Victor let out a hoarse, fractured sound as he strained to move, to speak, but the paralytic had done its job, locking him in a silent, helpless state. Heavy boots pounded up the staircase. The DEA was closing in. The agents moved with precision, clearing each floor like clockwork. Damien turned toward Leah, truly seeing her, maybe for the first time in months, as if searching for a glimpse of the woman he once thought he could build forever with. All he saw was fear and survival instinct. "It's up to you now, Leah," he said, extending the syringe. "Use it on him, and when they arrive, tell them this is how you found him. Or let him live, and gamble that he'll tell them everything you were involved in." She looked down at the needle, face contorted with agony. "Why are you putting me in this position?" she whispered. "I'm not putting you anywhere," Damien replied, his tone as icy as stone. "I'm giving you a choice, something I never had." The footsteps were nearly at the threshold. Her hand shook as she reached out and took the syringe. 3 days afterward, Victor Price's body was discovered in the guest room of the house that had once belonged to Damien and Leah Hale. The official cause of death was recorded as cardiac arrest, allegedly triggered by the stress of the DEA operation and subsequent incarceration. Medical staff at the detention center did everything they could, but he never came back. That same afternoon, Leah sat across from Agent Wells in a sterile federal interrogation room. Shadows under her eyes betrayed 3 nights without sleep behind a jail cell's cold bars. "Let's make this clear," said Wells, flipping through the file in front of him. "You're saying you had no idea the crates were filled with heroin? That you honestly believed they were standard merchandise for Mr. Price's business?" "Yes," Leah said firmly. "Victor told me they were high-end fitness equipment, prototypes. That's why they needed a secure location. And not once did it strike you as odd that the shipments arrived under armed escort?" Wells countered. "You never looked inside?" Her gaze dropped to the tabletop. "I started to suspect something," she admitted quietly. "But I was scared. I didn't know how he'd react if I started pushing." Wells remained impassive. "The DA is ready to press charges. Being tied to trafficking this volume of narcotics carries serious consequences, Mrs. Hale." "I've told you everything I can," Leah said, her voice cracking under the pressure. "What else do you want from me?" "Your testimony could make a difference," Wells replied. "But we're not stopping with Victor Price. We're going after Karpov." The moment Victor's death made the news, Leah's phone blew up. 87 calls from a blocked number before the DEA seized the device as evidence. She didn't need to see the caller ID to know who had been trying to reach her, or what he was demanding. "If I help you get Karpov," she said slowly, "what kind of deal are you offering?" Across town, Damien sat in a different interrogation room, this one occupied by 2 investigators from the Army's Criminal Investigation Division. His hands were still, resting on the table, while the officers sifted through a folder in front of them. "Major Cole backs your version," one officer noted. "He confirms you provided intel on a narcotics operation headed by a Russian national, Alexei Karpov." "That's accurate," Damien answered calmly. "And how did you come into possession of this intel?" asked the other. "It started with my wife," Damien began. "I got home from a double shift to find all my clothes in trash bags on the lawn. She'd texted, 'We need your closet space for my ex's stuff.' When I asked how long he was staying, they laughed, said it was permanent." He paused, letting the moment linger. "I didn't argue. I just walked away," he continued. 3 days later, I learned her ex, Victor, was using our house as a stash point for Karpov's heroin. That's when I reached out to Major Cole. He gave me his full support." One of the investigators leaned in. "Here's the sticking point, Mr. Hale. You went to Cole only after a very public encounter with Victor Price at a diner, where, according to witnesses, you threatened to expose him. Why the delay?" Damien didn't waver. "I needed to be sure before bringing in the military. That confrontation was intentional, meant to draw more information out of him." "And what about your wife?" the officer asked. "What's your take on her involvement?" Damien hesitated before answering. "I think she got caught in the middle. Whether she truly grasped the scale of what was going on, That's up to the courts to decide. The two men exchanged glances. Mr. Hale, the lead investigator asked, were you present at the residence during the DEA operation? There was a long silence. No, Damien replied steadily. I was staying at Blake Morgan's. He'll confirm that. With a muted thud, the investigator closed the file. We're suspending any further inquiry into your actions. The DEA will handle everything tied to the trafficking case. As Damien walked down the hallway, he passed another interrogation room. Through the glass, he caught sight of Leah. Their eyes met, just briefly. No words, no signals. Just the unspoken weight of everything that still hung between them. Her words made no sense. That evening, inside Blake's apartment, Damien sat wordlessly as the local news announced the in-custody death of Victor Price. Heart failure, Blake commented, raising his beer for a sip. How convenient, Damien murmured, eyes fixed on the screen, which now showed Alexei Karpov being led away in handcuffs, thanks to Leah's cooperation. You never told me what really went down in that room, Blake said cautiously, glancing over. Between Victor and Leah. Damien turned away from the TV. Does it even matter? Probably not, Blake conceded, but she did call you. A lot. 87 times before the feds shut her line down. She can keep dialing, Damien said coldly. She might strike a deal, testify against Karpov, lighter sentence, could be out sooner than expected. Damien stood and walked to the window. The city below shimmered, every light a quiet reminder of love, deception, and consequence. Doesn't change anything, he said eventually. Some things, once broken, stay that way. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Mr. Hale, this is Agent Wells. We need to meet. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Blake leaned in to read the screen. What do you think she's after? Damien slipped the phone back into his pocket. Closure. Not something most people ever get. 12 months passed. The remote cabin tucked into the Montana wilderness had become exactly what Damien had envisioned. Secluded, self-sufficient, and framed by mountain vistas that stirred memories of Afghanistan. Only here, the dangers were gone. The wind rustled through the pines, and now and then a bird called overhead. That was all. He sat outside, steaming coffee in hand, watching as sunlight began to paint the peaks in gold. It had been a full year since the Karpov case wrapped. A full year since he'd stepped away from the life he knew. Karpov was serving 3 decades in a federal prison, thanks largely to Leah's testimony. As for her, she'd received a 5-year sentence, with the possibility of parole in 3. A surprisingly lenient verdict, all things considered. Damien had never gone to see her, never replied to a single letter, but they still arrived, season after season. He hadn't read any of them, yet couldn't bring himself to throw them away. Instead, they remained in a small box in the cabin, silent proof of something unfinished, something unnamed. Then came the crunch of gravel under tires, cutting through the morning stillness. He placed the mug aside and watched a black SUV climb the rugged path to his cabin. He'd known someone would come eventually, just not this soon. Agent Wells emerged, her tailored suit stark against the rustic backdrop. Stunning place, she said, stepping up the porch stairs. It's meant to be miles away from everything, Damien replied, gesturing to the chair beside him. Coffee? She nodded and took a seat. He returned with a fresh cup, finding her staring out across the valley. I could get used to this view, she said, taking the drink. But you won't, Damien said plainly. You didn't come here for the scenery. Wells took a measured sip before answering. Karpov's syndicate is gone, his holdings seized, his people either locked up or in hiding. As far as outcomes go, this one's about as clean as it gets. And yet here you are, Damien replied, his gaze steady. She lowered the cup. Victor Price's autopsy was re-examined. The original finding, natural causes, is now in doubt. Damien showed no reaction. Who's questioning it? I am, she said. There were small inconsistencies, not enough to bring a case, but enough to make someone like me wonder about what really occurred during that raid, and whether Leah Hale is paying the price for more than just narcotics. Their eyes locked for a long moment. Are you here to arrest me? He asked. No, she answered after a pause. I'm here to put this to rest, for my own peace of mind. And if the truth doesn't offer that? She turned toward the sweeping landscape. Law and justice aren't always in alignment. Price destroyed lives and profited off human misery. If his death didn't follow the rule book exactly, she shrugged. I can live with the ambiguity. Damien studied her. That moral grayness was familiar. It echoed his years overseas, where resolution rarely came without compromise. The official record stays as it is, he said quietly. Everything else is just conjecture. Wells nodded. Understood. She reached into her coat and pulled out an envelope. Your ex-wife gets out next month. Good behavior, cooperation, the usual protocols. She wanted you to have this. Damien didn't reach for it. She's dying, Wells added gently. Cancer, advanced stage. The Bureau's granting compassionate release. The news landed with the force of a blow, abrupt, disorienting, and far more brutal than Damien had imagined. He had run through endless conclusions in his mind, mapped out countless paths their story might have taken. But not this one. Never this one. Reluctantly, he took the envelope from her. Appreciate the coffee, Wells said as she stood, her tone composed. And everything else, whether you wore the badge or not. When she was gone, Damien stayed where he was, the envelope still sealed, turning it slowly between his fingers as sunlight crept higher through the trees outside. Eventually, he tore it open. A single photograph slid into his lap. He and Leah, laughing, unguarded on their wedding day, caught in a moment neither had noticed at the time. On the back, written in Leah's unmistakable scrawl, were just a few words. That night, I chose wrong. I'm sorry. There was no invitation to meet, no explanation, no plea, just a quiet acknowledgement, one they had both in some unspoken way always understood. He walked back to the cabin in silence, placed the photo in the box with the other unopened letters, and began packing a small rucksack with essentials. When he was done, he locked the door without a final look. The mountains rose ahead of him, calling to him as they always had when the weight of his thoughts became too much. He would hike to the ridge, set up camp, and wait for night to draw the stars overhead, distant and indifferent, far removed from the chaos of human lives. In that stillness, he would reflect on what lingered after vengeance had been spent. Not forgiveness, he couldn't offer that, but maybe something that resembled peace. He slung the pack over his shoulders and set off up the trail he knew like the lines of his own hands. As his boots struck the earth in a steady rhythm, his mind turned over old choices, the ones made under pressure, the ones forged in silence, the ones still ahead. He thought of Leah, now likely in a hospital bed, her past finally catching up to her, of Victor, whose pride had exacted a price he hadn't been able to pay, and of himself, a man who had once stepped away from violence only to carve out his own version of justice when the world offered him no better answers. The trail grew steeper, his lungs burned, and behind him the cabin faded into a small, forgotten shape in the valley below. Ahead stretched the wilderness, free of judgment, free of sorrow, untouched by remorse. It offered no comfort, no punishment, only the next step forward, and the one after that. Damien Hale kept walking. I'll meet you there. Our story comes to an end here. Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for taking the time to watch. If you enjoyed this story, please check out other videos on this channel. See you soon, my dear friend.